Though America's national park system might be its best idea, according to Ken Burns, who obviously never ate a deep-fried Oreo, its glacial peaks and simmering springs mask a stinky secret. Millions of visitors travel to these national parks, which are managed by, you'll never guess, the National Park Service. And having that many people in a park requires the infrastructure of a small city. Many of these fragile, vast landscapes can't support centralized plumbing or sewage systems, which makes dealing with that much fecal matter a huge, complex, dare I say crappy problem for the Park Service. Most national parks have centralized plumbing at their fancy visitor centers. But at trailheads, overlooks, and viewpoints, the NPS relies mostly on pit toilets, which are basically what you get when you combine the classic charm of a pit with the modern expectations of a toilet. Simply maintaining bathroom facilities for visitors is a burden for parks, with Yellowstone National Park spending $12,000 on toilet paper alone in summer 2018. But even though they're the ecologically best solution, pit toilets put a huge burden on fragile landscapes because it turns out when you're continually filling a hole with poop, eventually those holes fill up. Millions of visitors mean that these toilet holes get filled every 1 to 2 years, which requires rangers to dig new ones nearly every season. And even though parks have been using them for decades, park officials still aren't sure how long it takes for all that poop to decompose. There's also the safety issues that come from expecting tourists to know how gravity works, like this woman who fell into a pit toilet at Olympic National Park after trying to save her phone, or this guy who just really likes jumping into them. To fix this, some parks have switched to vault toilets to lessen the impact of visitors in the backcountry. But these self-contained toilets, which have removable pits underneath them, carry their own problems, literally. Each vault usually includes a tank capable of holding 750 to 1,000 gallons of Cliff Bar slurry, but unlike a pit toilet, that waste can't just be buried. And in remote rural areas, where most parks are located, excavating vault toilets can be a nightmare. In Washington's Olympic National Park, rangers can hike anywhere from 10 to 30 miles or 16 to 48 kilometers to remove them. When they get there, rangers must move these 200-pound vaults to less smellable areas and then again to a flat area where a helicopter can airlift the vault out. Believe it or not, using helicopters to airlift giant tanks full of poop out of national parks is extremely common, as it's the most cost-effective option for quickly hauling a lot of waste out. In Olympic and Zion National Parks, officials have an entire day dedicated to airlifting out human waste from a handful of vault toilets along the park's most popular trails. First, they airlift out the vault toilets, then remove the waste in 3,000-gallon pump trucks that are carted 250 miles or 400 kilometers round trip to a wastewater treatment plant in Wellington, Utah. The entire process can cost upwards of $10,000 per toilet. At this point, you're probably thinking, why do the national parks even need toilets? It says in the Constitution that if I pay my taxes, I'm legally allowed to pee anywhere I want. But not having bathrooms in the parks creates different problems. Not so much for stressed out rangers, but for the fragile ecosystems the parks protect. At Rocky Mountain National Park's popular Bear Lake, more people have been peeing in the backcountry, which has already elevated the lake's nitrogen levels, a problem found by tracing elevated caffeine levels in the water back to visitors' coffee habits. So even if you think going #1 behind a bush won't hurt anyone, you're risking getting the fish hooked on lattes that they just can't afford in this economy. The good news is, there are solutions to this crappy situation. New high-tech toilets have given the NPS cheaper and more eco-friendly options for managing visitors' bathroom habits. Several parks have implemented toilets from Seattle company Toilet Tech, which only have to be emptied every 5 years by separating liquid and solid waste. These toilets divert urine to the surface of the ground simply by using gravity, and the solid waste is carted off on a conveyor belt with the very real actual name Poopsglader that visitors activate using a foot pedal when they're done. Some of them even employ dung beetles to eat away at the solid waste and minimize how much waste rangers have to carry out. But even though they're cost-effective as the years pass and the poop grows, most parks don't have the money to put $20,000 towards a single toilet tech contraption. So in some places, the most cost-effective and eco-friendly solution has been encouraging visitors to carry out their poop, and some officials have distributed powdered doggy bags to dry out people's bowel movements. Ultimately though, the National Park Service doesn't have enough money to implement ecologically beneficial toilet systems because even as their visitation has skyrocketed, their budgets have stagnated. Dealing with visitors' bathroom habits might be the nastiest part of a complex issue, but it's just that, part of a larger issue. These places just weren't designed to support millions of people, which the pandemic has only made worse. In Arches National Park, cars aren't allowed to enter when parking lots are full, which can create delays anywhere from 3 to 5 hours long just to get past the entrance station. To combat this, Arches, along with Yosemite, Glacier, and Rocky Mountain, instituted timed reservation systems to space out the crowds. As visitors wreak havoc on America's iconic landscapes, the NPS has been left with fewer resources to manage the ever-increasing swell. That's right, I tricked you into learning about wide-sweeping policy issues with a title about poop. You're smarter now, and there's nothing you can do about it. Around the world, the conflict between man and nature is intensifying. Our Wendover documentary, The Colorado Problem, covers the evolving crisis of the Colorado River, which is being pushed to its limits as millions of people depend on the American West's largest river for sustenance, agriculture, and power. As an on-the-ground deep dive into the Colorado River Basin, it exists because of Nebula. Since Nebula is a user-supported platform free of the YouTube algorithm, we're able to make long-form content that wouldn't otherwise be viable, which is what sets it apart. And both us and so many other creators have taken advantage of that to make loads of exclusive videos that will only ever be available on there. And the great thing is, you can subscribe through the Nebula CuriosityStream bundle deal and pay less for both sites than you would for Nebula by itself. If you sign up on curiositystream.com/HAI or by clicking the button on screen, they'll throw in a Nebula subscription for free, all for the low price of just $14.79 for the entire year.